Welcome to one final PFF college football preview show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here, previewing the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame down in Atlanta. Dalton, the first ever 12-team playoff has now been whittled down to 2. We got Ohio State against Notre Dame. It's just the amount of games that we have previewed this year. We previewed 122 games this year. I can't believe we made it all the way to the national title game. It feels surreal almost.
And these are two teams that we've previewed a lot because they've been playing in so many kind of almost win-or-go-home games, right, with all the adversity they've gone through. Obviously, the playoff games, you had the Northern Illinois loss for Notre Dame. You had the first Oregon loss and then the Michigan loss, obviously, for Ohio State that had them in the spotlight. I mean, I think you have two teams here that went through a ton of adversity this year, right? And it might not seem like it. They're top programs, this and that, but Notre Dame played with their backs against the wall all season. And Ohio State, of course, with their roster, went into this season and went through it with as much criticism as any team in the country. I think it's a perfect example, though, in football. And I know, everybody wants to see whoever go undefeated. That's what we wait for. That's what Nick Saban got us used to. But I think at its core and the higher levels you get into football, that's what it's about, right? Bear Bryant used to talk like that at Alabama, whereas how many times can you get back up, right, from getting punched in your teeth, right? And in this 12-team format with 3 playoff games, plus if you're playing on conference title weekend, now neither of these two teams did, but you have to play at least, 15 games now? 16 games that these two teams have to play to win a national title. I think the days of running the table and just going undefeated through them all are gone.
Yeah.
It comes down to, just like it does in the NFL, can you get back up? Can you work on your flaws during the season? And then can you play your best football through January? I think it works the exact same now with the length of the season, and we don't just have a one-game national title or even a 14 playoff like we used to. I think it's what college football is now, is bouncing back from whatever defeats and whatever flaws you have.
Not only are these two of the most talented teams in the country, like you said, they're two of the most resilient teams in the country. Like Notre Dame, Week 2, lost to Northern Illinois. Everyone, including us, were saying, I don't know if they can make the playoff right now, right? Because they got to win. They got to pretty much win out to make the playoff, and they did that. They won 13 straight games now to make it all the way to the national championship game and make their first national title game since 2012. If Notre Dame wins this game, Dalton, it'll be their first national title in 36 years. When Marcus Freeman, their head coach, he was 2 years old the last time Notre Dame won a national title. Ohio State, they entered the year as arguably the most talented team in America. That's why I picked them to win the national title preseason. But they suffered some bumps along the road, right? You mentioned the loss to Oregon and Eugene. That was at least understandable. What was almost inexcusable is the loss to Michigan when they were like 21-point favorites at home against Michigan in the regular season finale. In Ohio State's last game before the college football playoff, they lost to Michigan, and everyone's like, oh, boy, I don't know what they're going to do now. They beat Tennessee. They beat Oregon. They beat Texas, 3 of the best teams in the country. Not only did they beat them by an average of 20 points in those 3 games. Now Ohio State is back in the national title since that COVID 2020 season and searching for their first national championship since 2014, exactly 10 years ago. And also, Dalton, that 2014 national title was the first year of the 4-team playoff. Now Ohio State's trying to win in the first year of the 12-team playoff as well. So not only, yes, they're talented, they're some of the best teams in America, but I think these are two of the most resilient teams in the country and why these two are left standing right now. Before we move on to our full preview, full in-depth on both sides of the ball in this game, we got to talk about our sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. The new year is a great time to reevaluate financial goals, not just for yourself, but for your kids. Now is the perfect time to make sure your kids are on a path toward a solid financial future. A kid's investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life is quick and simple to set up and lets you invest in their future now for education, big milestones, and more. Fabric by Gerber Life is designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and tutors to music classes, and when they're adults and out on their own, they can use the funds for anything that they need. It's all online. Manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFF College. That's meetfabric.com/PFF College. meetfabric.com/PFF College. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. So to remind everyone, our records going into this, I unfortunately cannot make up ground on Dalton. Dalton has an 80-42 record on the year. I am 77-45 on the season, Dalton. So listen, you won the in terms of how many games we got right, but I will say if Ohio State wins this game, I got the preseason national title pick right, which I think we agreed before the year is worth 4 points. So if I win this game, is
that what we did?
Yeah.
Is there tape on that?
I think there is.
Could we find that before we make that official?
I think we said that. I'm pretty sure we said that back in August.
I feel like that's the sort of thing that needs to be said on camera at the beginning. Do I get anything? I had Ohio State as the runner-up to. I had Georgia winning.
No, it was 0 points. Sorry.
Okay, I get nothing for that. Okay, I'll have to find which video we recorded where you said that at the very beginning and establish those rules. But good to hear you say that though. I'm glad I clinched it before we even got to.
No, I clinched it. Right, if I get Ohio State right, I clinched it actually.
I don't know.
We'll see if I do pick Ohio State.
We might leave this up to Eli.
Well, yeah, we might have to.
Stop the count.
Just to remind everyone, all the stats we're going to break down today, you could get with a PFF subscription at subscribe.pff.com. All the numbers and grades for college football and the NFL. Mock draft simulator for 2025 NFL draft. I know a lot of you already is draft season for you already as well. And of course, best fantasy tools on the planet for next year and the best betting tools on the planet for the rest of the NFL playoffs. So check it all out at subscribe.pff.com today. All right, remind everyone what we're doing in this preview. We are previewing both the Notre Dame offense and the Ohio State offense in their entirety, the passing game and the run game, what the matchups to look out for both of those aspects in each offense. So, Dawn, you have the Notre Dame run game in this one against Ohio State's run defense. What should we be looking out for when they are trying to run the football?
Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I don't have a whole lot of fancy schemes or anything like that. Mike Denbrock's run game is relatively simple, and they just want to get in and dominate people physically, right? But let's start on the Ohio State side of things. This is the best run defense in college football. And you just the sheer level of talent that you have on this defense. And we've said it all year, but this has really been, I would say, the one constant through everything. You know, there was times they struggled on offense and the offensive line, times where the corners, you think about the first Oregon game where, okay, and pass defense and throwing outside the numbers, but this run defense has never left them. For this season, Max, Ohio State is a 95.1 run defense grade. They hold that or better. That's the best run defense grade by any team in college football since Ohio State in 2019 with Chase Young and that crew. This isn't just the best run defense this year. This is the best one of the last 5 years. 3.9 yards per carry allowed for the season. I believe that's 6th in the country. Less than a yard before contact per carry. When you're talking about especially how dominant the front four of this defensive line is, Sawyer, Tuamoloau, Tyleik Williams, who you see pictured there, and Ty Hamilton inside. Anytime you're allowing less than a yard before carry per carry before contact, that's elite stuff. When you're getting less than a yard, only I think 6 or 7 teams in the country are doing that. They're one of them. Explosive run rate allowed 9.3%. That's elite. And even if you get a crease on the defensive line and you get through the first level, they're only missing 13% of their tackles in run defense this year. That's a top 15 mark in the country. So first level, fantastic at disallowing yards before contact. Second level, great tacklers, right? Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, especially. Even the corners outside, I think Davison Igbinosun has like an 83 run defense grade. It's all over the place, and that's what sticks out to me with their defense. One of the very few defenses that's elite at all 3 levels, right? Only 4 teams in the country are in the top 20 of run defense grade on the defensive line, at linebacker, and in the secondary. Alabama, SMU, Oklahoma, Ohio State. That's it. Those are the only 4, okay? You're talking about a team that's just so I've talked about in the passing game already. The level of talent plus the scheme that Jim Knowles is putting together right now is ridiculous. They've only allowed 200-yard rushers all year now, and those were in the 2 games that they lost. So if you do get a 100-yard rusher and you do crack through, now you have a chance. But in these 3 playoff games, I think the thing that what sticks out to me most on the Ohio State side, and then I'll get to Notre Dame, just not letting anybody outside. And normally we do think about, okay, you talk about keep and contain. We have great edge players. They do. Absolutely, they do. That's a big part in it, right? 29 off-tackle carries they've seen in these playoffs. They've given up 73 yards. Nothing. No, obviously less than 3 yards a carry.
And that second and goal on the 1 is a perfect encapsulation of how good they are.
Precisely where it's and that's the next part of this is even if you do have schemes or some way to get around Sawyer and Tuimoloau, the second and even third level guys are so good at just flying to the football, and they're such great tacklers. And I think part of it is the way it's structured right now. So I've talked last week about, or the last couple weeks, about this 3 safety look that they're giving us, and we'll get Jordan Hancock moving back from the slot, and Caleb Downs is kind of that whole player when you're talking about they're playing cover 2. So you've got Ransom in a deep half, you've got Hancock in the other deep half, and you've got Caleb Downs as this rover in the middle, right? And what that does, I've talked about what it does for them in coverage. What that does in run defense and the way they're structuring it is instead of having Sawyer and Tuimoloau way out in what's a wide 9 technique, right, where it's just you guys are the 2 outside guys, they're kind of pinching in a little bit on these tackles, and the 2 linebackers, Cody Simon and Sonny Styles, are bumping out a little bit, and they're kind of stacking over the 2 ends. And essentially what they're doing is creating a funnel where with both of those resources, they're going, yeah, you're just not running outside. Absolutely not. What you're going to do if you want to run the ball on us is you're going to run in there at Tyleik Williams and Jack Sawyer pinching in and crashing down and JT and Hamilton. You want to run on us? Go through the brick wall. Go ahead and do it. And the problem is, normally, if a team were to do that, a less talented team than these freaks, you would line up and go, okay, fine, you want to play wide, we're going to double team you, we're going to get after it. Do you know what happens when you try to double team Tyleik Williams?
He's a double team?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing happens because you can't. You certainly can't block him with one. I don't think there's a guard in college football that can block him in the run game. If you double team him, you don't really get anywhere anyway. And your other problem is inside or outside now, the way that it's structured. With Downs as the rover and sitting at about 9-10 yards when he's in that spot. There's other plays where it's a more traditional look. Maybe you'll see him or Ransom down as like a weak side linebacker, really playing linebacker. But when Downs is in that 9 to 10 yard look, basically right over the center, he's basically their middle linebacker, but because he's so far off, you know how you'll see pre-snap on every team, you'll see quarterbacks or centers calling out the Mike linebacker,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
It's really Caleb Downs, but they can't call it because if he's 10 yards off, you can't have any linemen getting to the second level. They're just not going to get there. You know, they're supposed to get guys at 5 and maybe 6 yards when we're talking about the second level. Caleb Downs, not Caleb Williams. The Bears might need him at safety next year. You can account for him if he was playing up at 5 yards. You can't do it at 10. A center's not getting to 10 yards on Caleb Downs. So he's just got this free run, especially between the tackles, of wherever he wants. So even if you break through that brick wall and you think, oh, now I've finally got a chance at an explosive run between the tackles, now he comes flying down like a heat-seeking missile, and he's one of the best tacklers in the country. So just the way this whole thing, and even that toss sweep play that you mentioned, the second and goal on the 1 yard line, who's the first one to the ball?
Yep, Caleb
Downs.
Yep.
Because you just, at any point, you can't account for him. And 99% of the time, anyone coaching a run game for an offense is going to go, okay, if we get our back one-on-one with a safety, we should win that most of the time. You don't win that with Caleb Downs. You just don't. He's too good a tackler. He's got too good of instincts. He gets where he needs to be before the back does. So Ohio State is essentially saying, yeah, he's a safety, but we're going to win that one. And you're not going to – and even at times when it's Lathan Ransom, they feel good about that too.
Oh, yeah.
They're fine with it. I mean, it's just – they have so much talent, and now they're just funneling everything. Basically, they're just saying we're just not giving up the sideline. Just go – you have to go through the brick wall here. And if you can do it for a whole game, fine, you beat us. But we're betting with 3 potential first-round picks up front and then a whole bunch of good players behind them that you're not going to do it. Yeah. And then Notre Dame, last thing on this, Notre Dame's kind of lost the explosiveness a little bit. The weirdest part about them getting here and through these 3 playoff games, they actually haven't run the ball very well. Outside of the 98-yard run that we saw against Indiana, you take out that run, they're at exactly 3 yards a carry. Otherwise, they're backs, not Riley Leonard. Leonard's been their best rusher over the last 2 weeks. And I think the couple of big things here, they're as a team, they have a 55.5 run blocking grade through these playoffs. And they've played 3 really good run defenses, but it's not getting any easier. And they've had issues, first of all, getting outside. Hasn't been great outside of getting off tackle on that one run. And you can see the explosiveness, and maybe it's Jeremiah Love's injury. If he's not 100%, it's a problem. During the season, they had the 15th best explosive run rate in college football.
10-plus yards, right?
10-plus yard runs. 19.8% of their carries. 15th in the country. It's elite stuff. When you're getting near or over 20, you're an elite running team. In these 3 games, 9.6%. Do you want the list of teams that had an explosive run rate that low during the regular season?
Who was it?
Kennesaw State.
That's it?
And that's it. They're the only team in the regular season that had an explosive run rate under 10%.
The brand new FBS school,
You've suddenly gone from an elite explosive running team to, that's a number for a whole season that would be at the very bottom of the country. It's a real grind right now for Notre Dame. They're not getting a ton of push up front. Love isn't healthy. He's clearly not 100% if he can't create the way we're used to see him creating. And their best asset, especially over the last 2 weeks running the ball, has just been Leonard equalizing the numbers. So they need more out of Love and Price in this game. I don't think Riley Leonard is just going to will them through as he's done the last 2, because Ohio State is going to score. They should score more points than Georgia. And Penn State scored 24, which is pretty good, obviously. But their defense, I don't think, their run defense is not quite as good as Ohio State's. I don't know if Leonard can just will them through on the ground like he's done in a couple of games this year. They need Love and Price to be really, really good. And this Ohio State run defense is as good and as fundamentally sound as it gets.
Yeah, and listen, like you said, they played elite run defenses in the playoff, but Ohio State's got the best one in the country, right? So that's still a factor. And also Jeremiah Love, you mentioned that knee injury he's got. Now, maybe the 10 days off he has between the Orange Bowl and the national title game will help him heal, but they need him healthy because they need that. That's the kind of guy that I think is the best running back in the country going into next year.
If you have Love going against Caleb Downs in those Oklahoma drill scenarios, you feel like you have a shot.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a different thing when he's 100%, but they do have to block better too because they're only creating less than 1 yard before contact per carry. So anytime on offense you're under 1 yard, it's not great. And anytime on defense you're holding them under 1 yard there, you're doing elite stuff. It's a real problem.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the trenches as well for my matchup to watch in the Notre Dame passing game against Ohio State's pass defense. Really, can the offensive line hold up against a standard rush to allow Riley Leonard to attack Ohio State, maybe down the sidelines in this game? Because Riley Leonard, we kind of went over this a few times already. He's got a pretty massive split in his situational football this year. When he's kept clean, 37th in the country in passing grade. When he's under pressure, 125th in the country in passing grade. When he's blitzed, 16th best in the country. When he's not blitzed, 115th in the country. So basically what I'm saying right there is when Riley Leonard is under pressure and when he's not blitzed, kind of one of the worst quarterbacks in America, but when he's kept clean and when he is blitzed, he's one of the best quarterbacks in America. Ohio State really is comfortable not sending a blitz. They are 86th in the country right now in terms of blitz rate, right around 33%. So basically, 1 out of every 3 passing plays, Ohio State is sending 5 or more rushers at the quarterback. So not a lot at all. The reason they could do that, Dawn, is because not only is their defensive line dominant in run defense, they're dominant overall. Ohio State is 3rd in the country with a 41% pressure rate this year, 41%, even though they're 86th in blitz rate. That just shows how freaking dominant Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, even Tyleik Williams makes some plays in passing plays as well. That defensive line is unbelievable. And Riley Leonard, when there's a standard rush, he's forced to be more precise with more defenders in coverage instead of attacking one-on-one matchups like he prefers. And listen, Notre Dame's offensive line, yes, they've struggled in the playoffs in terms of run blocking, but on the season, they're 17th still in run blocking grade. They have been really good all in the regular season. It has far more issues in pass blocking this year. They're 82nd in team pass blocking grade and 61st in pass blocking grade when there is not a blitz as well. My matchup I'm really looking at is the edge defenders, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. Those are clearly the 2 best pass rushers that Ohio State's got. Against the Fighting Irish offensive tackles and Anthony Knapp, the true freshman, and Emil Wagner. Sawyer and Tuimoloau, 6th best pass rushing grade among FBS edge pairings. Knapp and Wagner are 92nd in pass blocking grade among offensive tackle pairings in college football. So protecting Riley Leonard, like I just said, is number 1 priority for their aerial attack, but the number 2 priority is to attack the Buckeyes down the sidelines. Because if there's really one defense in Ohio State overall, one defect, it's maybe the corners in Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun. They're still solid players, but they're not the all-world superstars you got pretty much everywhere else for Ohio State. On throws inside the numbers, Ohio State is second in the nation in team defense grade. On outside the number throws, 61st in the country in team defense grade. And of Leonard's he has 16 big-time throws this year. 11 of those 16 big-time throws have been outside the number. So a guy like Jaden Greathouse is an emerging star, a sophomore wide receiver for Notre Dame. He was a star against Penn State in that Orange Bowl as well with that big touchdown to help out Notre Dame win that game. He's going to be critical to help Notre Dame have a second dimension offensive because you just broke it down. This is a running football team. But you can't be one-dimensional against Ohio State. So you're going to need a guy like Jaden Greathouse to win on the outside against Denzel Burke or Davison Igbinosun, where Ohio State safeties maybe cannot get there. That, I think, is a big matchup to watch. But ultimately, I think it really comes down to the offensive line and can they protect Riley Leonard against the standard four-man rush that Ohio State's got.
And there's two things. There's a further problem there, and we'll get into Notre Dame's passing game too. But Anthony Knapp at left tackle only played 14 snaps against Penn State. Rolled his ankle pretty bad in the first half, and he didn't play the rest of the way. So now all of a sudden we don't even know if they'll have their starting left tackle in against, for the most part on that side, JT Tuimoloau. It's going to be tough. And when you're dealing with now, they were already struggling, their starting unit. And if Anthony Knapp, who's been starting at left tackle as a true freshman, another true freshman freak that we have in college football, been starting as a true freshman all year and playing really well. If they don't have him for any reason, now you're looking at what coming into the season would have been their third-string left tackle, right, in Tosh Baker. So it's a problem. And we even saw against Penn State, Abdul Carter and Denai Dennis Sutton, they were dominant. They were dominant in that game. They were keeping Penn State in that game, right? I think now you're talking about a further level, even if Nat plays, if he's only at 80%, because like you mentioned, it's only a 10-day turnaround, which is a little longer, than the usual week, but is it enough? Is it enough to get Jeremiah Love 100%? Is it enough to get Anthony Knapp 100%? I think you're absolutely right. Your first priority against any team, but against Ohio State especially, is if we can't block this front four somewhat, it's over.
Yeah.
And Texas couldn't even do it last week. They had their worst game of the season against this unit.
And a guy who really struggled in that game, Cameron Williams, also battling an injury in that game too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you are any less than 100% on your offensive line, and Texas certainly was, and we don't know how banged up even Jake Majors was still at center,
true.
And even Kelvin Banks has been playing through an ankle for the better part of 5-6 weeks. If you're not 100% locked in, first of all, and then even just healthy up front against this front four, where there's all four of them are NFL players, and three of them have first-round potential. They might go in the first round. It gets hard. It does get hard. And sometimes, look, we do complicated things and schemes and finding all these different matchups, but there's certain games at the end of the day where you just, first of all, have to be good enough in the trenches to compete.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame's offensive line, I think there's serious questions about that.
So let's go over to the other side of the football. That is Ohio State's passing game against Notre Dame's pass defense. I think it's maybe the most fun matchup in the entire game, Dawn. You have this one. What should we be looking out for in Will Howard's throwing the football in this one?
So let's start with last week. Texas actually did a really darn good job of defending the pass, as they always do, as they've done all year. You think about everything Texas accomplished on defense last week. They only gave up 21 points.
Yep.
The 7 with Jack Sawyer, scoop and score is what it is. They did a great job. They limited Jeremiah Smith to, one catch for 3 yards, was it? Extra attention was clearly paid to him. You could see defenders when they were getting into their drops, and Texas is a zone-heavy team. Just immediately the helmets would turn. Where's number 4, right? And they, at the very least, they made Ohio State beat them with someone else, right? Carnell Tate led them in receiving. Henderson made the big play with the screen. We saw Buka get a couple big first downs. G. Scott making some plays at tight end. They structured their defense as such where just there's constantly 2 guys on Jeremiah, which makes sense. And as a true freshman, first of all, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
There we go. That kid's our biggest problem. And it's on tape from the 2 games before. Yeah, it's kind of understandable, right? The difference between Notre Dame and Texas is whereas Texas is an extremely zone-heavy team, and Pete Kwiatkowski's going to mess around and mess with the quarterback's eyes and all that. Notre Dame doesn't. They stick to their guns, and they're the best man coverage team in the country, okay? Highest rate of cover 1 in college football. Man coverage across the board, Xavier Watts sitting back there in center field. And they don't usually get out of it. And so when you watch them, it's not really so much of like, okay, you have to kind of pinpoint what beats them. And I think it's the usual things that could beat them in man coverage anyway. I'll go down that list. But 93.5 coverage grade in man coverage this year for Notre Dame, first in the country. 14 interceptions, first in the country. 38 forced incompletions, first in the country. 55.6 passer rating allowed, second in the country.
Oh.
Somebody in the group of 5 was better on a lot less snaps.
First in the Power 4, then.
First in the Power 4.
Yeah.
So, and 55.6, I mean, that's just ridiculous when you talk about NFL passer rating being that low. But I think they just, I believe they're going to stick to their guns. I don't think we're going to see them suddenly become a zone team because Jeremiah, and I don't think Marcus Freeman's afraid of anybody, right? He's got really talented players. Leonard Moore is another true freshman freak.
Disgusting, dude.
Unbelievable. Christian Gray on the other side's been really good. Jordan Clark in the slot. We see Rod Hurd in there sometimes. You've got athletic linebackers like Jack Kaiser. And then you've got, Xavier Watts. It makes everybody else's life easier. Everybody that's in man coverage makes their life a whole lot easier when we know we've got Xavier Watts back there that if we do screw something up, he's the best ball hawk in the country,
yes.
right? Or one of them at the very least. Another top 50 type guy who's going to go in the draft, right? And I think what they do, there's two things for me that stand out when you watch them. Because I'm like, how are they so good at this, right? Now, obviously, we know Freeman's background, even when he was at Cincinnati back in the Sauce Gardner days and all that. They know where their leverage is, right? When you're talking about the corners on the outside, Moore and Gray, using the sideline as their friend, right, as that extra defender. They're most of the time on the inside shoulder, and they're forcing everything to the sideline. There's only maybe like a half dozen times this year or so where you're going to line up and just chuck up go balls on the outside because these guys are so good, right? Then the inside guys, they know where their help is at. Their help is with Xavier Watts, right? So it's like they don't have to worry about too much teams getting up the seams because they know Watts is going to be it. So the technique is flawless, and I think the emphasis, and they're better than many, many college teams you're going to see in man coverage and getting their eyes to the football, right? Because so much, you think about man coverage in football, and it's like kind of like face guarding in basketball, where it's just like, okay, that's your guy, and maybe find the ball if you can. No, there's a clear emphasis. That's why you have all those picks and forced incompletions on get your eyes around to the football. Stay with your man, but have your eyes on the football. And if you do lose a step, the next step is, okay, find the hands, right?
Yep.
Hear that all the time. Find the hands, because if you lose a step, just sprint to the hands then. And they're so good at the technique. It's really a coach's clinic in playing cover one, playing man coverage at every position. Now, what problems does Ohio State present here? First of all, Will Howard's been making the throws.
Oh, yeah.
Second highest passing grade this season against man coverage. I believe it's only behind Jackson Dart. Jeremiah Smith, number one. When you think about, okay, man-to-man, what is it? Who's better, right? Number one, Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
He's got the same receiving grade against man coverage as Teteroa McMillan as a true freshman. So there is a shot in this game because we've seen it in a couple of other games. Georgia tried it, hit a big play or two, right? Or Ja'Cory Brooks earlier in the year with Louisville. He got him on a go ball. You could just send Jeremiah on a go ball whenever you want against Gray or against Leonard Moore on the outside and go, all right, fine, let's just give it a shot because he's Jeremiah freaking Smith, right? Two, I do think Notre Dame does a really good job when it comes to adjusting to motion when they're in this cover one, whether it's rotating Watts and Aiden Schuler or just however they want to structure it, because that can be a challenge when you have motion behind the line of scrimmage pre-snap and you have to move some things around. But I do think Ohio State, the key here, I can't overstate the role that Emeka Egbuka plays in all of this, because for as much as Smith is generally the X, and you can just chuck up a jump ball to him, and it might just go for a 50-yard gain or touchdown or whatever because he's the next Julio Jones or whatever. Egbuka being able to move around and attack inside from any part of the formation is going to be huge, and I think that is the main part of the field early in the game we could see them attack. We saw a little bit of it but against Texas, but I was more of finding those zone windows. This one where I think with Notre Dame, you do have to attack those inside guys. If you get Egbuka isoed up on Jordan Clark, who is really good, but that's still Emeka Egbuka, that's a first-round receiver, I'm taking that matchup, right? Or if you get even a G. Scott or somebody, or Egbuka on the inside somehow on Jack Kaiser or somebody, a linebacker, those crossing routes. You think about a couple of plays Tyler Warren made last week, and I know he's a tight end, but those crossing routes, getting over the middle of the field, not deep enough to get to Watts. Don't throw it at Xavier Watts, but not quite deep enough to get to Watts, but these crossing routes and things inside to attack these inside defenders down low. The other two things I have, Carnell Tate, obviously emerging as a pretty nice third threat as the other guy on the outside. And that's part of the reason Ibuka's allowed to move around so much is, okay, we can trust Tate enough on the outside. And your fourth problem, Travion Henderson, as we saw last week in the screen game, but he's a real threat. I think down the stretch of this season, he's made enough plays out of the backfield where you go, okay, I would feel good if we had a look where, we bunch some things up and we get, say, Henderson out on a wheel, out running Drake Bowen or somebody like that. I would feel good about it. So I think there's 4 issues there. But the biggest one that would stick out to me, especially early in the game, is Ibuka, more so than Smith. Now, we might see Smith get a jump ball. We're going to see that, right? And if they win, decent chance of a 100-yard game. He's not going to be one catch for 3 yards again.
Yeah.
Right? Texas they sent their whole defense at him, essentially. I think Ibuka is a big, big problem for Notre Dame. And actually, wasn't he a big problem for Notre Dame last year, if I remember? He had a pretty darn good game. Yeah, right? I think they didn't. Morrison held down Harrison pretty good, and Ibuka he made a couple of big catches, especially down the seam.
Yes. Yep.
So he already knows he can do it. And this is a lot of the same. There's some different pieces, but this is a lot of the same defense you had last year. I think that's where it would start for me is I'm looking at where Ibuka's at early in this game and moving around and getting in on those inside defenders.
For any sickos out there who are looking ahead to the 2027 NFL draft, you got Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver 1, maybe number 1 overall player in that draft, and Leonard Moore, who I think right now is CB1 in 2027. That kid is Listen, I think Jeremiah Smith might be the best receiver in the country. He is not even might be. He is the best receiver in the country, probably the best player in the country going into next year. Leonard Moore might be the best corner in the country
his man coverage grade this year is identical to Travis Hunter's.
It's nuts, dude.
As a true freshman.
That kid is special. That kid is unbelievable. And yeah, it's so those two are emerging superstars in college football. If we get that matchup a lot, I cannot wait to look back at the tape at that one. I got the Ohio State run game because the Notre Dame run defense. So, Dylan, you broke this down really well in our preview of the Ohio State semifinal game where you're talking about their new gap-heavy scheme. I'm really going to go dive into that a little bit more as well because in the regular season, they ran a really balanced run scheme, 44% in gap, 48% in zone. But since the loss to Michigan in the regular season finale, you mentioned before, Chip Kelly completely switched it up. Now they're running gap 69% of the time. They're running zone 25% of the time. So go from 25% in zone in the playoff compared to 48%, basically double that in the regular season. A major reason for that, in my opinion, is that Ohio State is playing with basically a makeshift offensive line with Josh Simmons, their star left tackle, done for the year. Center Seth McLaughlin, star center, done for the year as well. Gap scheme is a little simpler for the offensive line and the running backs. It's all about picking a specific hole in the defense and exploiting it, which can help out a unit that doesn't have a lot of chemistry playing together for an entire season. Zone scheme is more about threatening like multiple gaps in a defense, and offensive linemen must be able to know which defenders to pass off to their teammate, which defenders to attack after the ball is snapped. In gap scheme, you kind of know pre-snap who you're going to be going after. In a zone scheme, you don't know who you're going to be going after until after the ball snap. That requires significantly more time and more chemistry to nail down, something the Buckeyes don't really have right now with this makeshift offensive line. So I think that is a big reason why they're playing so much gap scheme right now. Notre Dame has had some issues against gap scheme runs. They're 75th in the country with 5 yards per attempt allowed, 91st in America with 3.4 yards after contact per attempt as well. Defensive line in particular has kind of been not great in run defense this year. They're 71st in run defense grade among their D tackles and edge defenders. They are far better at the second and third levels, though. Linebackers and defensive backs combined for the 8th best run defense grade in college football. So I think guys like Jack Kaiser, guys like Drake Bowen, even the corners and the safeties for Notre Dame, they're going to be big in this game. I think it's Ohio State. If Notre Dame can slow down Ohio State's gap-heavy runs, it could allow the Fighting Irish to drop more defenders back into coverage to help out against Jeremiah Smith, help out against Emeka Egbuka and all the Carnell Tate and all the other weapons that Ohio State has. But if not, then all of a sudden Notre Dame is going to commit more defenders to the box. And when you have 7, 8 guys in the box against Ohio State, you're in trouble. Because at any moment in time, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, Carnell Tate, they can go 80 yards on you at any point in the game. So Notre Dame is going to be big on winning, I think, with normal boxes in this game against those gap-heavy runs. If they got to commit more defenders to the box, though, they're in big, big trouble in this game.
Yeah, well, because then you start talking about when you're sending guys down and creeping inside further and further, there's just more space for number 4 to work with outside, right? Jeremiah Smith. And there are going to be times, I would assume, where they structure it to where maybe Watts is leaning in his direction, or however they're going to do it in the cover 1 scheme. Or maybe you do get a straight double team and they leave just everybody back in coverage, right? But if you can't stop the run, then it only makes things harder to stop the pass. And I think the point about all these gap scheme runs we're talking about, and a lot of it comes with pulling offensive linemen, right? We talked about the counter schemes last week where you have 2 backside pullers. They ran a little bit of power last week too, where you only have 1 coming, the backside guard coming. And what it does when you're running it like that is it takes a lot of the reading out of it for an offensive line. Yeah. And also you got to think about, I got a guard playing left tackle. I got a backup left guard. I got a backup center. To run a lot of those zone schemes and get lateral like that, I need athletic offensive linemen. And Ohio State right now, they just don't have the most athletic offensive line. You got a bunch of big guys up there, right? So we have to adjust this. We go, okay, then we just got to wash everything down and we got to just get after it. And we got to push people around, right? And I think they did enough last week against Texas, admittedly an extremely hard team to block with Collins and Broughton and everything they have. You think about this Notre Dame defense, who's the best player on the D-line?
Howard Cross, probably.
Right, and he's what, 280?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think even against Howard Cross, let's just wash it. Fine, we'll just go ahead. We'll just run right at him, right? I think you have a very athletic defense with guys like Kaiser and Drake Bowen and the safeties flying around on the back end. But if you get on them quick and you get this big offensive line going on these down blocks, getting down inside on them, then it gets a little bit harder. So I do think it is a challenge. And honestly, boy, this is a game I'd really like to have Riley Mills in there. No, he's the bigger guy, right? He's 6'5", he's 310. He's the one who can eat all that space inside. And when you don't have him, and I know they've had guys in his spot, Gabriel Rubio specifically has been really good in his spot, but this is a spot where you need a Riley Mills, right, against this sort of scheme and this team running their offense the way they are.
So I feel like there's probably a lot of Notre Dame fans that have probably already hit the comment section on this video saying, so these guys are telling us we don't have a chance. And I understand a lot of the matchups that we're talking about today, it sounds like we're favoring Ohio State in those matchups. If Notre Dame is going to pull this off and win this game, Dawn, what do you think the advantages are for them in this one?
How they've gotten here so far. First of all, elite coverage. That's been the biggest reason so far that they've gotten where they've gotten. Now, they've had some really darn good matchups. Indiana, really good receiving core, but there's not a ton of speed. They're very much possession receivers, and they get balls going over the middle of the field. Georgia, not a good receiving core. Penn State, not a good receiving core.
You don't have to tell me twice, yeah.
I'll tell you all offseason. I don't care. So elite coverage, especially in matchups where they should be covering at an elite level against those teams. Now, this is a different level. If they can cover on the outside in man-to-man, the zone approach for Texas, it worked to the extent of they gave up 21. They didn't score enough, right? 2, turnovers. Notre Dame's been winning all year forcing turnovers. Got to have at least 2 in this game. Ohio State, 15 games, 15 turnovers. You're going to get 1, probably. If you don't, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
If Ohio State if they finish this game with no turnovers, it's done. Turnovers. Notre Dame's been living with them all season. Like I mentioned, especially in man coverage, leading the nation in interceptions. Okay. 3. I need Jeremiah Love 100% somehow. Yep. I don't know how many cortisone shots it's going to take or what it's going to take. Need Jeremiah Love because. And this offensive line to play better, right? I think it's got to be Notre Dame football. I think it's going to be hard in this game for Riley Leonard to just will you through it in the run game. He did it in the Louisville game. I think it equalized the numbers. He did it in the Georgia game. He was their best runner. That's where we have to see a big level of improvement. And it's a thing where you go, okay, we haven't done it yet. Somehow we've won 3 playoff games, and outside of 1 run from Love against Indiana, we really haven't run the ball well. If Notre Dame runs the ball like they're capable of, and now you've got, okay, they're moving the chains in a way that these other teams couldn't on Ohio State. That's a different thing. So I do think essentially the way Notre Dame wins the ball game is the way they've been winning all season, right? Where I see the biggest disadvantage is I think against Ohio State at some point you have to be able to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah.
Because the moments where Texas and Quinn Ewers could do it, they were driving down the field. But you're not going to dink and dunk, and even that explosive run rate I talked about that's so low right now for Notre Dame, you have to rip off chunks against Ohio State's defense. You are not going to just plod your way 4 yards at a time down on them. They're going to stuff you before you can do that. It's not going to happen. So I think the backs have to be better and the run blocking has to be better. And turnovers are going to be the biggest reason, and elite coverage, because that's the number one reason they've gotten here.
I think turnovers is huge. I think Jeremiah Love being healthy is huge for them as well. And I also think, like I said before, you attack those corners for Ohio State, you got a shot. I think there's definitely a shot for Riley Leonard to make some throws down the sideline.
And Mike Denbrock's offense is really designed for that. That's really how it was at LSU. That's how it is now, is those slot fades, even sometimes just action go balls and Leonard just getting rid of the ball quickly and giving his guys a chance. You have to take – you on offense as for Notre Dame and Riley Leonard, you're going to have to take a couple gambles.
Yep.
You're not going to get through this game safe.
Yeah.
There's not a safe way to beat Ohio State. You have to take your chances. We saw Oregon do it. The only team that beat them safe was Michigan, because they don't even have anything other than safe on offense. And they only beat them 13-10. I can't even – that game's not on Ohio State's defense. They didn't score. Mason Graham just killed them.
And Notre Dame doesn't have Michigan's D-line either. That could just take the game over.
No, absolutely not. So the only game where we really saw Ohio State struggle on defense, it's because Oregon felt like they could take their chances outside.
Yes.
You just have to gamble. And if Riley Leonard, if he throws a couple go balls and – those two guys, Burke and Igbinosun, and even Jermaine Matthews played a lot last week. If they make plays on the outside, so be it.
You live and die.
You had to take the gamble. You had to. I think we know what Ohio State can do throwing outside the numbers. Notre Dame's going to have. You have to, because you're just not going to. That Michigan game is not a blueprint. That's an outlier for how bad Ohio State played. If they play that bad, then they don't deserve to win an Natty. It's going to be hard to beat them 13-10.
Yes.
Very, very hard.
That's how Oregon beat Ohio State, too, like you mentioned. Like, Dylan Gabriel was taking shots. Like, Denzel Burke got toasted in that game. He allowed, 140 yards, I think 2 touchdowns in that game. So, if you're Notre Dame, and something I've liked, listen, Riley Leonard has his issues as a passer. One thing I really like about him, though, is those go balls down the sidelines. Ever since his time at Duke, he's been able to hit those throws with very good consistency. Like I said, 16 big-time throws, 11 of them have been outside the numbers this year. Attacking those corners, I'm with you, man. When there is one-on-one matchups with Burke, Igbinosun, Matthews, whoever, on your receivers, you got to take the shot. Because otherwise, you can't be winning over the middle of the field. Your run game's probably not going to be as dominant either. I think Riley Leonard hitting those balls down the sidelines is going to be massive for Notre Dame in this game. All right, Don, we've previewed it for long enough. Who ultimately is going to take home the 2024 College Football National Championship?
It sure feels like, at least me, I feel like I have to take Ohio State here. It feels like they're the best team, and Notre Dame, they've certainly earned their way here, and they have a great defense that can keep them in this. But I just struggle to see, unless Jeremiah Love hits the super soldier serum or something here.
Yep.
I just struggle to see how Notre Dame is going to score enough points to keep up with this, right? Because we like Penn State's defense. Ohio State's defense is better.
Yes.
It is. And we like Georgia's defense. Ohio State's defense is better. And I think at this point, if Notre Dame beats them, I will hand the belt right over. And if they win this game, I think if Notre Dame wins this game, it's going to have to be in the teens, honestly. I don't know that Notre Dame can score more than maybe 20 points in this game without if there's a Will Howard implosion or turnovers or any of that. I've got it 31-17 Buckeyes. I think there's just too many avenues to success, and especially the Texas game last week, or a couple days ago, I should say, for us right now. Jeremiah Smith got taken away. They didn't run the ball all that well. They showed some cracks on defense, right? We remember Texas was 1 yard from tying the game.
Right.
And they still found a way to win, right? And it's Jack Sawyer making the big play. It's Carnell Tate making plays. It's G. Scott making plays. It's Travion Henderson on the screen. The offensive line had their best game pretty much since Josh Simmons got hurt. There's just so many avenues to success now. Whereas the first 2 games, maybe you go, well, Jeremiah Smith's just so friggin' good that we can't stop him. Texas did stop him. They still lost.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't know outside of just Notre Dame playing out of their mind and the turnovers. Forced turnovers, any game, it doesn't matter who you're playing. Any game, you force multiple turnovers, you got a shot if you can turn them into points. Otherwise, I just struggle to see how Notre Dame scores a lot of points in this game. That 17 to me almost feels like a max, especially if they keep blocking the way they've blocked the last 3 weeks.
I got Notre Dame scoring 17 as well. I got it Ohio State 28-17. Very similar to you. Listen, Ohio State finally looks like the best team in the country, like so many thought they would be preseason when they brought back everyone. They brought in Caleb Downs. They brought in Quinshon Judkins. They brought in Will Howard and Seth McLaughlin. Everyone like, this is the best team in the country. And it's why I picked them to win the national title preseason. Then they lose to Oregon, lose to Michigan. You're like, okay, are they actually the best team in the country? Since this playoff started, like, no, this is the best team in the country. And they've started to look like that right now. I think the defense will shine as they slow down the Fighting Irish rushing attack. And I think Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, and all the other pass catchers and weapons they have could make some big plays that against a Notre Dame defense that so often puts their corners, on islands. You put your corners on islands against Ohio State, you're asking for trouble, honestly. So even though they're terrific in man coverage and the best in the country, still against Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, they're going to make plays if you put them one-on-one a lot. So
you know the weird thing, too, a number that I found jumped at me. Just as far as Jeremiah and how afraid teams generally are to play man coverage against him, Ohio State's played 15 games, okay? There are still, even with the extra games, only 7 Power 4 teams who have seen less man coverage than Ohio State. There's still, I think it's 63rd out of 70 teams.
And just snaps?
In the snaps of man coverage they've seen. And they've played 3 extra games.
And that's a counting stat, not an average stat either.
They've played 2 or 3 extra games more than most of those other teams. I mean, it's just a thing. Nobody else. Purdue is the only one because they just won't get out of it. It's why they're...
teams are literally terrified to play it against them.
Can you blame them?
But the one school that's not is Notre Dame. They're going to stick to their guns, I think.
I would be surprised after the success they've had all season and the way Notre Dame sticks to their guns. I would be surprised if all of a sudden Notre Dame went away from it.
Yeah.
And I would be worried if they did that for them because then I'm like, okay, we're trying
new things
in this spot. I almost think you might as well stick to your guns if you think you're the best man team in the country. But Ohio State, I mean, Jeremiah said it himself, after the Tennessee game, he's like, just don't. Just don't. For your own good. He even warned them, don't play man coverage on us. Just don't do it.
And he has the second most receiving yards against zone coverage in the nation. I think Power 4 as well. Only Travis Hunter has more receiving yards against zone coverage than Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
He just does everything.
He's just learned from it. Well, we're going to get used to that for a long, long time.
Besides Hunter, which is obviously his values inflated because he plays both ways, but in terms of wins above average, Jeremiah Smith is now the most valuable receiver in college football.
I think he's
as a true freshman.
I think he was... I don't know about coming out of the Texas game, but I saw recently he was tied for the Power 4 lead in receiving grade.
Dude.
As a true freshman.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And I think he'll have a big game in this one as well.
He'll be a story, that's for sure.
So we both got Ohio State winning the national title. Again, their first national title, if they win this game, since 2014, the first year of the 4-team college football playoff, really college football playoff in general. Ohio State won the first ever national title there. Now we both think they're going to win the first national championship of the 12-team college football
when they
playoff.
expand again, we got to pick them
again. I'm picking again. It's 16, which would be in 2 years, I think. I think we'll have a 12-team playoff next year, and then they might expand it after that. So we're going to have 2 years of a 12-team playoff.
We'll have to pick Ohio State then, too.
We might have to. But we've got Ohio State winning. I just want to thank all of you guys for watching our show throughout the entirety of the college football season with all the preview shows we've done, all the review shows we've done. So I want to thank you guys. I want to thank our producers back there and Tyler and Eli for always being here for our preview and review shows as well. We're not done on this channel, though. Listen, we got this game. Obviously, we'll be doing a review of this game as well. Our next video, Dalton, most likely will be a way too early top 25 for the 2025 college football season that'll come out directly after this game. Literally right when the clock strikes 000 in the national title game our video will be coming out for our top 25 teams heading into next season. Of course, draft content out the wazoo as well for the 2025 NFL draft. And of course, all the content in the world previewing the 2025 college football season as soon as this season is over. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that for our future off-season content. But again, thank you for all watching our 2024 college football season content, and we'll talk to you guys very, very soon. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.